What's up, guys? Flaming Geek here, and welcome to my spoiler discussion of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. So I'm going to be trying something new with the spoiler discussion. I really want it to be a discussion. So guys, don't be afraid to comment down below, and let's start a feed, and I will comment back on it. So, as you know, I'm not a big fan of the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. I think it's because I waited 2 months to go see it, and it was very, very overhyped for me. So when I went in, I went with these ridiculously high expectations. And that's not saying, like, I was going in with a negative point of view. In fact, like, I had read the Guardians of the Galaxy comics back when I was, like, I think 8 or 9 years old. And I own about a stack this big of them. So I knew who they were, and I was very excited. And I was one of those people when Marvel released that first trailer for Guardians that I was actually commenting on YouTube being like, this is going to be a great film, guys. Like, give it the benefit of the doubt. It's got an amazing cast. So I didn't really enjoy that film, and I've tried rewatching that film, and I can't. I just find it so boring. So I went in with this film with the lowest expectations as possible. I told myself I'm going to be open-minded, but I don't want to get myself too excited like I did last time. And it paid off. I avoided as much as I could. I did do some trailer reaction videos, but other than that, I ignored all the press for it, and I just went in with an open mind, and I'm very grateful I did. I saw it in IMAX with a very good friend of mine, and got this lovely poster. Guys, go see it in IMAX. There's some moments where I was like, yeah, this was well formatted for IMAX. Let's get down to it. What did I like about this film? I really enjoyed the character development, and it was done very well in my opinion because there is such a large main cast, but I like what was done. You find out why Yondu was ostracized and exiled from the Ravagers. You find out a little bit about Nebula and Gamora and their previous relationship with their father Thanos, and that was pretty fucking dark. I remember sitting there being like, oh my gosh, there's kids in the audience. This is disturbing, but awesome, because I like gory, dark stuff. But still, I was like, that's a surprise. You find out a little bit about Rocket the Raccoon, just a little bit, and you see his relationship with Star-Lord, but this is mostly about Star-Lord. There's this underlying theme with all the characters, which is things that shaped their identity, who they are, and they're searching for it, and they're looking for answers. And Peter Quill ultimately finds a little bit more. He finds out who his father is. His father's ego, played by the amazing Kurt Russell. And Kurt Russell makes everything better. Everything better. If anything, if I didn't like this film, I liked Kurt Russell, if anything. He is an amazingly talented actor. Loved him in Hateful Eight. I love him in everything. Big Trouble, Little China, all that stuff. Anyways, the addition of Ego to this was amazing. He was a really interesting character, and now we're getting into the spoilers, guys. So if you haven't seen the film, go see my spoiler-free review. This is where the spoilers start. Okay. You find out Ego is the villain, and I really liked that. It wasn't to say that it wasn't unpredictable, because you see I forget their name, the gold people from that planet. They're like the first introduced antagonists because Rocket steals those batteries from them. But I was sitting there, I was like, hey, they haven't really introduced our villain yet. And I was like, it has to be Ego. Like, it has to be him. And it was, and I actually liked that. You have Star-Lord, who then has to struggle to make this decision, where you're trying to think of how is he going to react to this. First, to start off with Ego. What is he? He's a celestial being. He doesn't know if there's any others like him. So he's essentially a god, which as soon as you find that out, I always think of, like, it made me think of Star Trek right away. In the episode where you have Apollo, and whenever in Star Trek they encountered these god-like beings like Q, there's always the instance where you have to realize that they view anything that's not them as insignificant as, like, we view ants. So when it gets brought up that Ego is a celestial being, there were a alarms ringing in my head, and I was like, oh crap, like what is he gonna think of everyone else, because Peter is half celestial, but then everyone else must be very insignificant to him. And that was it. You get to see his amazing planet that is actually him. He is in the core of it, and he was able to, over thousands of years, build this planet, extend his power, and eventually build like a body for himself. And to go and create his perfect universe, he was going to different planets, hooking up with space chicks, impregnating them, and then getting Yondu to bring his offspring to his planet, and then he would test them to see if they were celestial, if they had control of the power. Unfortunately, none of them were successful except for Peter. And what he would do, and this is where it gets really dark, is he would kill them painlessly. And there's a scene where Gamora and Nebula find like these just cavern filled with bones of corpses. Really dark stuff. I think to a certain extent this is one of the more darker Marvel films. Even though it was very bright and sunny and gracious and wonderful, it is dark. So you get to learn a little bit more about Nebula. No, it's a little dark. And as a consequence, Ego's master plan is he'd been embedding all those flowers into the planets, and his plan is he's going to go take over the galaxy and create his perfect universe, which, as you know, it never works out. So he's the main antagonist, and I really liked that. And I liked that Peter had to get to his level to destroy his father. I really liked what they did with Nebula. Nebula was one of my favorite characters from the first film, because there was a lot of baggage going on there. You wanted to know why she hated her sister so much, and you find out a little bit more. And this is where the film gets dark again. Thanos had her and Gamora fight, and each time Gamora would win. And to make Nebula closer to perfection, like her sister, Thanos would rip out a part of her body and replace it with a machine. So she talks about getting her eye ripped off from her arm, part of her leg, her brain. Like, that is painful stuff. And how, like, to her, it didn't matter to win because she just wanted a big sister. But ultimately, to Gamora, that's what mattered to her. And so it was kind of Gamora and Nebula getting to this point where they both are able to actually be sisters. And it was very sad. And I really wanted Nebula to join the Guardians because I love Karen Gillan and I loved her portrayal of Nebula. And Nebula is a very fascinating character, and I really wanted to see more of her in the film. So hopefully we'll see more of her. Obviously she's going to be there, I think, for the Infinity Wars, because it leaves with she leaves the audience and her sister basically going to go hunt down Thanos and kill him. Rocket, we get to see more of Rocket, but I found that the first film was a little bit more of his personal exposition and his story. He's kind of the tail end of the jokes. He's an asshole, which is what he is. But he's a great scene when he's taking out Yondu's Ravagers. That was hilarious, and that was very well done. And some more amazing voice acting by Bradley Cooper. I loved Yondu. I loved Yondu in the first one, and I loved him in this one. He kind of stole the show for me in many ways. His death, I think, was probably the best character death that Marvel has done in anything in the Disney universe right now. Like, his death, we only knew him for 2 films, and they did a way better death scene than they did for Harrison Ford when Han Solo died in Force Awakens, which I'm still angry about how that was treated as a fan. We got to see Han Solo over the course of 3 films in his original trilogy and 1 in the new one, and he just gets shot, and Leia goes and hugs Rey. I'm sorry, I know this isn't a Star Wars discussion, but I just want to see the way how Yondu's death was handled in this film. His character's story arc came in full circle. He was able to go through all the character arc developments and find his redemption. And Peter sees it as well, that Yondu was, even though he was a shit to him, was his father, was his real father, or as he was his Patrick Swayze? No, it wasn't Patrick Swayze. He was his essentially Knight Rider. I loved it. You found out why Yondu gets ostracized from the Ravagers. It's because he was handing those kids over to Ego, and he knew deep down what was happening, and he was making extra money, and so he kept Peter Quill. And it's hinted largely because he didn't want that to happen to Peter Quill, but also because he could steal shit. But I absolutely loved how his death was treated. I actually got very emotional there, and I wasn't the only one. A lot of people in the audience were crying, and there were some sniffles, and how he chooses to save Peter, and the way how Peter looks in his eyes as he's freezing in space, and he says no. That moment was so touching. It felt really real. It felt really raw. And I love how he gets a send-off by all the other Ravagers. That was beautiful, and that was an excellent way to end his story arc. If anything, go and see the movie for Yondu. It was very well done. Very well done. Drax, we got to see more of Drax, and I loved his relationship with Mantis. I can't wait to see that developed more in future films. Mantis was a very compelling character, a very interesting empath, and very well portrayed. And I can't wait to see her character develop a little bit more now that she's no longer with Ego. She's no longer technically one of his, like, sleep servants. But Drax was hilarious. I love that they showed him more. And there's a really touching scene where Mantis feels his emotion, his sadness for his family, and breaks down in tears. And that was very well done. He doesn't need to tell us how upset he is his family was slaughtered. He doesn't need to say that. It just is. I loved it. And I really liked, too, about this film that they don't have Peter, they don't have Star-Lord and Gamora getting together. I was really worried they were going to do that, and they didn't. They remained very true. Star-Lord and Gamora are just going to have this friendly relationship, and I really enjoyed that. I could see them potentially getting together at the very end of this franchise, but I like where things are heading. I like what they did with Baby Groot, and the music was so on par in this film. It was very well done. However, there were some moments that I didn't like, where, say, the scene where Ego activates his plants and they start to destroy those planets, and it cut to Earth. I just felt that was so out of place. I don't know if I'm the only one. I thought it was so out of place because it's destroying part of the Earth, and my first thought was, okay, when are the Avengers going to stop this? Oh yeah, Civil War happened. And it just felt really weird. I would have felt, it would have been more interesting if it was like one of the other planets they'd been to, like Nova Prime or something, getting destroyed. I don't know, for me it just felt really disconnected, and the texturizing on that glob was really bad. Like, it looked like shitty animation that you would see in a bad textured video game from like 2008, 2005-ish. I didn't like it. And yeah, I just keep Guardians in space. You can have the flashbacks on Earth when you're talking about Peter's past, but you don't need to show us Earth like that. I'm glad they didn't have to come and save Earth, though. I was like, oh, if they come and save Earth, I'm gonna punch someone in the face. And I'm glad they didn't. I'm glad the third act wasn't on Earth, and that's something I liked about the first Guardians. It was exclusively in the universe. I'm tired of Earth getting destroyed. So, yes. All in all, a thoroughly enjoyable film. Go see it, guys. If anything, go see it to get the IMAX poster. It's worth it. It's beautiful. It's very colorful. I really enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought about this film in the comments below. You can like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. You can follow me on Instagram, The Flaming Geek, or you can follow me on Twitch as well at The Flaming Geek. And as always, guys, thank you for your support, and live long and prosper.